Hello. I've taught you the entire system of morphology and syntax as far as an average person would need to know, but I'm not quite ready to leave the subject. I thought about this. I have a story to tell. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. First of all, in the last video I showed you various publications. I couldn't show you Warner's. It's typically known as Warner's, English Composition and Grammar, I think is the name of this series. It was the textbook I learned my sentence diagramming from and my grammar. It went out of fashion in the 1970s. I very carefully preserved a class set of the 7th grade and the 8th grade. That would be, say, 12-year-old and 13-year-old levels, and one of the complete course. I kept them for years and years, a class set, but what happened was I left them when I retired, and I ended up without any copy of my own, which is okay. But I want you to know that that is there, Warner's. If you're interested in this subject and you could get a copy of it, I still feel it's the best. I think teachers began to decide it was too hard for students. Well, I think it probably was when grammar got more muddled in the 70s and 80s. Well, back to my story. I would call this story Syntax and Keeping the Family Farm. And it is very personal. It absolutely applies to me. And it's to give you a reason to understand why syntax is not just for fun. It had a profound effect on my life, my knowledge of syntax, as I'm going to try to show you. Where I am teaching is in a barn on a family farm. It goes back 5 generations. And when my mother died and the estate had to be settled, there were 5 children. Well, what to do? My mother did not leave it clear. And of those 5, 3 of the siblings, 3 girls, 3 sisters, did not, let me say they felt that they could not help to preserve the farm and the family. They would have liked to sell the entire property. Of course they wanted the most money they could get. That's natural. But 2 of us, myself and 1 other sister, wanted to at least keep part of the farm as the family farm. Me especially, because I had lived here for 30 years or more. It came down to a matter. This is going to be legal speech for a little bit, but I think it's worth it. A petition to partition is the legal term for if you request that a property be divided up. That's a legal proceeding, and it can be done. It's expensive. That was one option. Another was the sale of the whole property. You're going to see this has to do with syntax. Well, since there were 3 that wanted to sell the entire property because it was taking too long, I'm a little sympathetic. But there were 2 of us that rather than that, we would keep whatever we could keep of the property and sell the rest. That would involve partitioning it. Well, as it got longer and longer, the 3 got impatient, and they decided they were going to force the issue. And word came from their lawyer that they were going to go with this, and since they were a majority, 3 is a majority of 5, they were going to force the issue. And our lawyer, they had gotten a lawyer first, so that meant that the 2 of us had to get a lawyer. And our lawyer at a certain point said, well, the game is up. We cannot stop them. The property is going to be sold. But I had asked that lawyer, could I see the law? Because I had heard that in the state of Pennsylvania, the state government tended to be very friendly to keeping family farms in the family, if they could. I'd always heard that, but I didn't know for sure. And he told me where I could find the law online, which I did find, and I read it carefully, and I read it. I have no training as a lawyer, which is important to why I'm telling you this story. I read it, and the word had come that the game was up. It could not be stopped. But in the middle of the night, in the wee hours of a Monday morning, it suddenly struck me that what I had read had the phrase plaintiff, a party plaintiff, as opposed to party defendant. Now, the Germanic word order would be to say plaintiff party, defendant party, and there was a difference. And I realized that actually the way the law was stated, that if that majority had been had by the party defendant, then it would have been unstoppable. But the law made a distinction. If the three advanced the case, they were the party plaintiff. This is a modifier modifying a noun here. And if, as long as we did not ask for that to happen, we were the party defendant. And that, and it made all the difference. It made all the difference. That morning early, I sent an email to our lawyer, and I said, "Do I understand this right?" And he emailed me back. We were on the phone eventually. It was a Monday morning. I was teaching school. And he said, "You are right. You are right. They cannot force this whole thing to be sold." Now, you may or may not care about this, but why I'm telling you the story is that it changed everything. They could not do what they wanted to do. It was going to be partitioned, and if they forced it, and ultimately a resolution was achieved. Now that, I managed to do that because I understood syntax. I still think it's remarkable that there were not 2 but 3 lawyers that went past, and they did not understand that. And I'm a layman. I've never studied law, but I understand sentence structure, and I understand modifiers. And I cared enough that I thought about it. So I'm passing that on. And the one other thing I wanted to tell you, my point again is that syntax is not just a matter of fun. It's a matter of clear thinking. And very often in a court of law, that becomes very important. In that whole process, I eventually found a lawyer, an attorney, who would have understood that. As far as I'm concerned, I went past 3 disappointing attorneys. But I finally found one who would have understood. And what this has to do with this course is I have some hope that he might someday be your teacher, because he's a Latin teacher. He's an attorney, but he is also a teacher of Latin. And the man understands syntax and grammar. If you are going to go into the profession of law, I highly recommend that you learn your grammar and your syntax. I don't see how you could not do so. But there were 3 lawyers, and if I tried, I could name them, who, well, the one maybe cynically knew, but was hiding it, this knowledge. I don't know about him, the lawyer of the 3. But the other 2, it went past them. All right, I would not normally share that, except I think it's worth it. It's very personal, not like the rest of my class. But there you have it. Syntax and keeping the family farm.